The making of a real estate investing team. It's our story. That's today's show. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And together we are a real estate investing family. Welcome to the show. If you're new to the show, we thought this is a great time to kick off the brand new year to talk about our journey and how we got where we are. If you're listening to this show, if you're just starting, or if you have many episodes under your belt, but you really don't know where we came from, what makes us an authority on real estate investing, we thought we're going to take you through a series of episodes that really catalog our failures, the things that we've overcome in the past, and how we ultimately got where we are. And we're going to do, I think, 5 episodes. Is that right?
That is correct. That's right. And so Happy New Year, everybody. We figured that we may get some people. I know for my own website, nataliemorris.com, I've had a lot of newsletter signups. So I feel like there are a lot of people who are getting serious about their finances in 2018 and are ready to rock. And Clayton and I have decided that in 2018, we really want to inspire other people to figure out how to get to financial freedom, because 2017 was a big year for us. We hit financial freedom. Clayton stuck it to the man and left his day job. It was an amazing time. And so we thought, how can we help other families do what we're doing? So we always share information on how we're investing this way or that way, how we're getting different deals. We do that all the time, week after week. But we thought, well, maybe we'll get some new people who will come to our channel and think, why do I trust these people? Who are they? What's their story? So we felt like it'd be a good time to refer you. And even if, maybe later down the year, people say, who are these people? Do we really think these people are worth listening to give you our story so that you know why you're following us, where we've been, how we got here? Because again, like I said, we are a family that has hit financial freedom. Now, neither of us has to work because we have invested so wisely in passive income through buy and hold real estate. We now own about 50 properties. We cash flow around $40,000 a month. And so we've made it our aim to share this success with other people so that other people can do this too. Isn't that right, my loving darling?
That's right. And she's turning over a new leaf. She's not going to be as bossy this year, which is great. I'm super excited about that. I'm super excited. And we're hunkered down. It's like 8 degrees. It's actually like -8 degrees out right now in a lot of parts of the country where we got some hot tea. So I'm excited to talk about this. And, right before the holidays, I was very lucky to spend about 3 days with the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, and had dinner at his home, spent a lot of time with him. And one of the things he talked about, he kept saying, he's like, Clayton, you're an educator. You're a teacher. The things that you and your wife have accomplished, that is what separates you from posers, from fakers, that you are really doing it. You and Natalie have really built this passive income. Well, really, I mean, there's a lot of people in all kinds of businesses who, for instance, he was joking. He's like, there are accountants that teach accounting at colleges that have never been an accountant. So do you want to get instruction as a student from someone who's never been an accountant? Do you want to learn law from a person who's never been a lawyer? This happens at colleges. This happens in schools. And so he said was, because we've been through it, because we were actively buying properties, that we are continuing to build this portfolio. This isn't something we've done 5 years ago. Natalie and I are constantly analyzing deals and deciding what's going to be our next purchase, and we want to help you get there. But we thought it'd be helpful to kind of go back to the beginning and kind of start with our challenges. So over the net, we're going to do 5 episodes around this, and these 5 episodes will look like this. We'll talk about our failures, our challenges, the things that we didn't know, the things that I wish we did know. Episode 2, we're going to talk about our turning points, losing jobs, all that kind of craziness. Number 3, we're going to talk about a plan. One of the most important episodes I think will probably help you tremendously, and what that plan looks like to help you grow in your real estate investing journey. Number 4, start buying properties. That's going to be episode 4. We'll talk about all the different mechanics and the things that we use to buy properties. There's a lot of different tools, and we'll take you through them. And episode 5, we get all of our ducks in a row. And that is really the advanced ninja strategies that we want to talk about, namely your legal team, taxes and those extra really advanced things, holding companies and trusts and captive insurance and all kinds of other stuff that will go in on that episode.
Okay, yes. So let's start with our challenges. We hope that throughout this journey you like us, for one. What if people don't like us? After all,
that's possible.
There are plenty of people that don't like us. I guess that's all right.
That's all right too. Howard Stern has made a career out of people not liking him.
I think people. Well, okay. I don't want to go on a tangent about Howard Stern, but yes. And then hopefully find this to be something relatable, because I'm sure in our story you'll find some kind of commonality somewhere that you've been, right? So Clayton and I met on Fox and Friends. Right? In 2008, it was March of 2008, so almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, I used to be in television. If you didn't know that, I used to be a news anchor in television at the #1 network in the world, if you can believe that.
Oh, were you really? Because I was on television too.
On the #1 show.
That was so impressive.
World.
We had really impressive careers.
No, if someone's new to the show, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know you worked in TV. Who are you? Who are you clowns?" So anyway, yes, worked in television, and you were a guest on the show, and that's how we met in this crazy, crazy journey.
We could drop a clip in here, but we won't, because it's embarrassing. It's 10 years ago, and so yes, we do have it on video. Though we showed it to our kids. We said that's when Mommy and Daddy met. But okay, that is a tangent. So we both had jobs. He was a news anchor on Fox. I was a host on what at the time was CNET TV, later on became CBS Interactive. So he had a show, I had a show. We both hosted news shows. And we did really well in terms of paychecks, right? We both made six figures. We both had finally made it to New York. We both got to New York in January of 2008. So right at the same time, separately, we had made it to the #1 market in the country, right? We're there. Everything should have been great. Now, both of us, though, unbeknownst to each other, had some experience as real estate investors, right? Clayton, talk about how you sort of knocked around as a real estate investor really in your career.
And
I feel like that's a really good term for what you did. Like, let me try this. Knocked around, like,
yeah,
as opposed to knocked up, but knocked around, right?
No, that happened later.
You didn't knock up any real estate.
No, I didn't knock up any real estate. That might have been more enjoyable.
Just kind of like okay, I'll try this. And Clayton got burned a lot.
I mean, so let's be honest, it was brutal. So in the beginning,
tell the story from soup to nuts.
Okay, so from soup to nuts and not knocking up. Yeah. So when I started in Florida, I got my first house. I bought my first single family residence in 2005, I guess, well before the crash. And it was back then when you can get like 100% financing and even have closing costs rolled into the closing. So you were really getting like 103% financing because you didn't pay a dime really. So I bought a 1-bedroom condo in a condo complex. Again, a great lesson, right? I'll never buy an investment property in a condo complex again because of a homeowners association. In fact, I've got a great video right here on the channel about on our YouTube channel, specifically on HOAs and why to avoid them. So check that out. However, so I bought this 1-bedroom condo. It was like a 1970s style deal. I paid like $74,000 for it at the time, and it was on a golf course in Orlando. And I started doing all the work myself. I was pulling out, ripping out drywall. I was pulling out old light boxes, like 1970s light boxes that were sort of recessed lighting in the kitchen. I painted cabinets. I was doing spackling myself. I remember churning the spackling cement with a stick that was brutal. Mudding it, as they call it, mixing the mud. Did the bathroom myself, ripped out old wallpaper. Like 1970s textured wallpaper, did all that. And
wallpaper's back, by the way. You needn't have done that.
I should have just
You should have just waited.
Yeah, because it's now back in fashion. We just did some wallpaper here in our primary residence.
That's why this room looks like this, because I'm about to wallpaper these two walls as accent walls. So if you're like, why does that girl
always
work in
messy?
A basement? You just wait. By episode 5, this is going to look amazing.
Can't wait because it's going into her office is like a nightmare. All right, and so I bought that 1-bedroom condo, but then next door a woman had passed away, She lived there for like 30
I
years,
think
and
you said that a little too
it was
enthusiastically.
so exciting. She passed away. No, she was there for like 30 years. She smoked heavily, and she passed away. I never met her. I never even seen her. And she lived in a 2-bedroom condo next door. Same setup, right? 70s style. She'd never upgraded it at all. Same rigmarole. Well, this was my first entrance into real estate investing and I realized then to find an off-market property, right? Sort of a wholesale deal that I could add value to. I didn't know it at the time, but that's really what happened. And I bought this property from the family. They inherited this thing. They lived thousands of miles away. Their grandmother passes away. They don't know what to do with this thing. She smoked for 30 years. The walls are covered in nicotine. I mean, literally, it took me like 5 coats of primer even to get this stuff gone. I had to clean out. This furnace was just filled with tobacco. It was just nasty. All new carpet I had to put in, cabinets. I did it all myself. So meanwhile, I'm working in morning television down there in Florida. I was up at 2:30 in the morning, and I would come home around noon, try to catch a nap, and then I'd work all night. I'd be over there till midnight sometimes with like music on in the background and just trying to work on this thing to try to sell it. I was going to flip it. Now, I didn't know any better, but I got and I got 100% financing on this thing too. And
So two lessons we're going to learn later is one, the inefficiency of not being an expert and not having a team, right? And trying to do this yourself. And two, investing to flip. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Being a flipper when you don't know what you're doing, and that's a paycheck. Again, flipping is a paycheck. So if you're thinking about getting into the flipping game and you're going to spend 8 months on a rehab and then the market takes a dump, suddenly you're left holding a property that you got financing on, and then you're going to try to flip it to some FHA buyer with kids, and so you be careful. And I don't do that anymore, but it's a lesson I learned, right? So what I did was I sold that property and the other one literally within the same week. I got 2 offers, but I was going like a month and a half without any offers, and I was starting.
Wait, I thought you lived in the first one.
I did, but then I just was moving to a house around the corner, an actual 3-bedroom house that I ended up going through a foreclosure on. So, I mean, it was
getting better.
It was great, So anyway, these 2 properties I sell at right before the crash happened. Okay, and I was panicking. I wasn't having any offers, and then suddenly, within 2 days, or within the same afternoon, my realtor calls me. Says we've got an offer on both. And I said, from the same person? I said, no, 2 different buyers. I was like, on the same day? And I said, yes, I'll take it. So on the first one, I sold it for like 110, I think, 74,000. I sold it for like 110 or something. And then the other one, I had bought it for 110, and I think I sold it for like 130. So what was that? Like I made like 40 or 50,000, something like that
for how many months worth?
60,000. For a number of months' work. I lived in the one for about a year, 2 years. So that one actually, I didn't have to pay any capital gains on, the whole 9 yards. So anyway, 2 properties I sold. I made like a little profit, 50,000. Great. Then I took that money and I invested it in some speculative land project in North Carolina, and it was again why I never buy speculative crap. I buy real properties that exist, that I know I can add value to, and that will cash flow, right? So lesson learned, I invested in some Phil Mickelson golf course community BS in North Carolina because a buddy of mine had done real estate before. He was a realtor out in California, and he's like, hey, we should do this. I was like, okay, all right. So,
and then, but it was a friend of yours, right? That brought you this opportunity.
Right. He had gone, he was friends with the guy that brought him the opportunity. This guy had gone in on this new build. They were building these log cabins in the woods with a Phil Mickelson golf course and a lodge at the center of it. And they were going to build it in like 3 phases.
But these are things you never intended to live in. You you intended to buy, and they were A-class properties.
They were more than A-class.
They were supposed to be huge.
They were going to be luxury, yes. And here's the key: I was going to flip them, right? So I was buying it with a construction loan from the builder for like, I had to put down 30.
It was in the 270s because this was something we still had to deal with when we got married. I remember exactly how much it was.
So I put down 30, and then I financed like the rest of it, and then I was going to sell it for like 370 or something. Like that sounded great. And guess what? the market collapsed and the builder pulled out. Phil Mickelson pulled out. The golf course never got built.
Damn you, Phil Mickelson.
The three, it was just his name associated with the thing. And I think he was going to design the course from what I remember, but they had a really snazzy website and had like trickling waterfalls through this like North Carolina forest and like all
Right.
this, stuff. And it was all speculative. It didn't exist. It was on the backs of, all these investors ponying up tons of money in these three phases.
Hmm.
So I was in phase one that never got built. I think I owned the piece of land that I overpaid 30,000 for. The land was probably worth 1,000 or 5,000 bucks or something.
Right.
I ended up going through a foreclosure on the whole thing, or a judgment. We ended up like working with a lawyer to pay it down. So I ended up being saddled with this big amount that I had to pay off on this thing, and it was just terrible. I mean, it was like lesson learned. Because it was because of that deal that I also invested in a thing in Fort Myers. I bought a piece of land. Now, this was not going to be as A class as this. It was a B class. I bought a piece of land and construction loan. They were going to build a whole new subdivision in Fort Myers. So my same friend brought me this deal as well through his same friend. We both went, he bought like three of them. I bought one, thank God. And that also went belly up. And the builders backed out. These homes that I was buying them for like 110 and they were going to be sold for 170. Guess what? It didn't happen. It went belly up. But guess who was stuck holding a loan on this big property that didn't exist? It was a construction loan. And the banks want their money. And
Right.
the builder's gone. There's no and so what did I do? I had to go through a deficiency judgment. And I woke up one morning when I was at Fox, came into work, and my bank account was frozen. I went downstairs to buy a cup of coffee, and I couldn't buy coffee. My debit card didn't even work. And I came upstairs to my office desk. Now here I am in Manhattan at the number one network in the world, and I couldn't
Making
even buy
six figures.
and I couldn't even buy coffee. And I went up to my
Right.
computer and I was shaking. I was like, something's wrong with my account. I don't know what's going on. And I log in, and all like my bank account was negative and it was red. I'd never seen it red before, but like the numbers were red and it
Oh
was
yeah.
frozen.
That happens. That happens.
So it was frozen. I couldn't buy coffee and I panicked. But then I took a deep breath and I closed my eyes at my desk and I said, you know what? It can't get any worse than this. And that was a huge moment for me because I realized now I'm gonna have to get creative with whatever and claw my way out of this.
But this was around the time, not long after we had met. And so I knew about the North Carolina stuff that was crumbling to bits. I knew about the Fort Myers, but also the home that you had lived in was also, you thought that you could sell that or you thought that you could rent that out. And then the market, this was 2008, 2009. So no home in Florida was worth anything, basically.
And I
I mean,
bought
that's an exaggeration, but right,
right.
these are two homes in Florida, one that you had tried to sell so that you could move up to a different job. You had moved up markets, right? And you
To
couldn't sell
Philadelphia,
that
right?
one. And so that one was also, you never considered renting that one?
Oh no. So I tried. So you're right. So I sold those two condos, right? And
Hmm.
I upgraded. I moved to this 3 bedroom that was a brand new construction, right? It was just built, so it was the best house in the neighborhood.
Right.
And the
But that's
builder,
the problem with those markets is that they're so saturated with new construction, right? Those sort of Phoenix, Las Vegas, Florida, is that there's new buildings, new complexes everywhere.
well, that's
So
what happened
when,
in downtown Orlando, which is they
yeah,
built all of these to sell, these condos, and right at the collapse happened, and they had to turn them into apartments because they were way overpriced condos in downtown Orlando, and they couldn't sell them.
right.
But this particular neighborhood was built in the 1970s, so this was like the best house now in this neighborhood. It was a vacant piece of land. The builder actually built it for his best friend, so he he did a fantastic job on it. And then the friend had a heart attack and
Hmm.
couldn't move. He was incapacitated and then couldn't buy it. And so
Oh,
we swept in, and he said, yeah, I'm happy. I'd like to close it quickly. And so I ended up We negotiated. I ended up getting a good, what I
But
thought
it
was a good
wasn't a
deal.
subdivision like an HOA type.
No, it was just
Okay.
like a normal house in a subdivision. It wasn't in a condo complex.
Right.
So it was a
Okay.
home. It was an actual physical home, a single family home with a yard and sprinklers and everything else. And so I paid, whatever it was, like 270 for it, or 264, and then closing
Yeah.
costs and all that. So it was like 270. I got a loan, another 100% finance loan, of course, back
So
then.
you were underwater. I remember actually really you had just started at Fox and you were underwater with this. And at the time, Donald Trump was coming in and doing real estate. There were just sort of business type segments in Fox. He had no political ambitions back then. And you were talking to him about how you were underwater with this house. You still had the mortgage, right? And remember, he gave you advice on this. His
Right.
advice was to walk away, was to foreclose on it, to stop paying the mortgage. Isn't that, didn't he say that to you?
He did.
You said that.
He
Yeah.
said that to me in the hallway. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
He told me, he goes, walk away. He goes, it's just business. Don't get emotional
Right.
about it.
And you're like, what about my credit and all that? And he was like, that can be fixed. That can be fixed later, basically. Like that was sort of his thing, is like,
Right.
you walk away from it. And
So I don't
so
know how I feel about that advice. I've never actually really sat down and reflected on that piece of advice.
well, I can tell you how I feel about
Okay,
that.
tell me how you feel. I'm curious your take, because then I ended up let me paint the rest of this picture, which is I went through then a foreclosure on it. Now I was going to work with the bank on a short sale on this property. Now I did try to rent it. I moved to Philadelphia, and I was having my realtor down there try to rent it. Now my mortgage was like $2,500 a month. This is why you don't buy A-class properties, folks, for investment properties. We have a whole series of podcasts and videos talking about C
Yeah.
and B-class properties.
We're going to get
Because
there. We're going to get there.
yeah,
I
we
promise,
will.
honey.
But when a property like this, in a market like that, goes, the people that lose their jobs or have to move live in A-class neighborhoods. And so suddenly, this thing that I was paying a $2,500 a month mortgage on, now the renter who was going to rent it, we actually got a client or a tenant who was like, they were interested in it through the realtor. They're like, but they had it listed for $1,300 a month for rent. Well, how does that look? Now I'm paying a $2,500 a month mortgage and renting it for $1,300 a month. Does that make any sense? No. So that's bad business, right? So I just said, no, I can't rent that. I've got to try to sell it. And we had it on the market listed, but now that house wasn't even worth 260. Now it was worth like maybe 200, maybe
Yeah.
190, right? So no one's going to pay 260, but that's still what I owed on it. So Donald Trump's advice then was,
So in this
walk
Donald
away.
Trump way of thinking, I kind of understand, and I'm, part of me is horrified.
That you agree with him?
No, no,
That
no.
he gave
And
us
I
advice.
don't want to alienate people who are fans of his, but that advice cost us a lot. And and you were completely like, already you felt like you were in this stage, you were, like Clayton is a Boy Scout type person. Like he's a pleaser. He tries really hard to fulfill his obligations. So this was something, it gave you permission to do something that I don't think you otherwise would have done, but you were drowning. And so you were kind of like, well, I can maybe take a loss, I can maybe wait, but life in New York was too expensive. You weren't sure how to make it all work. You still had to pay this mortgage for this property that was getting, it was certainly not a performing asset. And so you decided, because you were already struggling in these other ways, that you had to just sort of like, well, I'll just walk away from this. And I remember you telling the story to your parents, to me, to other people around you, saying Donald Trump told me that this was okay because he was someone respectable in the real estate investment business. And so it gave you permission to sort of,
It gave it authority. I mean, look,
right.
here was like the
And
real
I
estate
didn't think
magnate.
you would ever tell somebody this, because then when we wanted to move out of Manhattan and stop renting our apartment, but actually buy a house because we had children, we couldn't qualify for a loan because you had this foreclosure. And I had just left my job. We'll get around to my story later. But then it caused us all of these kinds of pain points for us personally, right? For all these things that we wanted for ourselves, for a house, for a car, for all of these types of things, your credit was destroyed. And people would always come with this mortgage. The investments you were able to come to settlements with, and, but this sort of stick your head in the sand and walk away from a deal, I can't imagine we would ever tell somebody this on this podcast. Like, I have a non-performing asset and I'd like to otherwise invest and buy things for myself. And we would say, walk away from that one, right? We get
Right.
sued if we did that. I can't imagine that we would do that. And so I don't blame Donald Trump for it, but I don't, I don't
Well,
even really blame you for, like, you did it, right? You didn't know any better. You were in a bad place in your life. And it's easy to Monday morning quarterback and say you should have done this, that, or the other. But I'm saying right now, how we feel as authoritative real estate investors, I don't think that was good advice. That's what I'm going to say.
right. And it's very easy with, in a commercial break, standing in a hallway, if you're Donald Trump, to just be like, yeah, just walk away from it. Don't get emotional about it. It's just business. And, and then what are the ramifications of that? Well, the ramifications are then, guess what? I was trying to work with the bank on a short sale. So I didn't fully take his advice. I actually tried to work with the bank on a short sale. And it was at a time when we found out that one hand at the bank didn't know what the other hand was doing.
Yeah, that was a huge problem.
So,
right.
And we know this to be the fact. 60 Minutes has done pieces on it. And so what would happen is, and I don't remember the bank even at the time, I don't remember. But anyway, I was working with them to just get this thing as a short sale to try to lower its value so that I could at least, get the mortgage realigned, maybe sell it short, whatever. I'd take the hit on my credit, but at least, I wouldn't have to foreclose on it and the whole 9 yards. And then it got sold at sheriff's sale. It actually went
But
through.
let's pretend that we had viewers who came to us and said, what should I do? I have this issue.
Well, number one,
right?
we would say you need to reach out to the law firms that we recommend. You need to talk with your accountants. We are not financial advisors.
Okay, but let's pretend it's a friend.
Okay,
then,
a friend. So a friend comes
who's
to us
not
and
going to
says,
sue us.
right.
Or my sister or your sister or whatever, right?
Right.
But in hindsight, what
would we
would
have
have
said?
been, or what would we have done with this amount of experience? And I do want to say that I am exceedingly grateful for that experience because Clayton couldn't get a loan. We never went to a bank to begin real estate investment. And that was great for us. That ended up being great because if we had good credit and great jobs, we would have learned what I think would have been the wrong way. And so these challenges forced us to learn what I think is the right way, to learn all kinds of alternative creative investment strategies, which I'm so thankful for. But if we could have done that separately, yes, we would have worked with the bank. We might have invited other investors in on our deal to wait out, right? We could, there's all kinds of creative ways to approach your deals without losing your integrity. You didn't have to do that, right? Without wrecking your credit, without all of these things, right? Now we're 7 years past it, so we're in a place where we can build now. But that was really scary, and it was, we didn't know any better. We just There was a lot of naivete there. So, yeah, and from a perspective of, oh, I'm marrying this guy, his credit's in the toilet. I feel like I was pretty good about it. Like I wasn't overly scared because I had good credit and a 6-figure job too. And I felt like we could fix it, I felt like, okay, we'll build from here. We'll take anything on.
No, and I remember feeling like just so that level of confidence from you was incredibly empowering because it was like, okay, we can get through this. And that also tells you about where we came from, right? I came from the real poor dad philosophy on wealth building, right? Which is your job is how you make money.
Mm-hmm.
You get a raise. That's how you build wealth. And if you lose a job, man, you're out of luck. Holy smokes. You better hide under the table because you're scared now. And I grew up with that. You, on the other hand, came from at least parents who had real estate investments. You saw your grandparents living off of their real estate investments that were able to spend time with you as grandparents because their real estate investments paid for their living. So we kind of came from these two different worlds. And so it was incredibly empowering that we sort of met in that way. and I was able to see through this cloud of like defeat. It was like the lowest point of my life, watching all
Yeah.
this unfold. Like, oh my
So we
God.
had to buy our first primary home in my name because Clayton's credit was wrecked, and
Yeah.
and I was the one who had the credit and the job, right? Even though he made twice as much as I did, we couldn't count his salary. So
Yeah, I think I even made like 3 times as much, and we couldn't count the salary. Isn't that crazy?
why are you going to hurt my feelings like
No, I'm
that?
just saying it was like absurd that the bank was like, "You're actually a
It was
liability."
not three times as much.
It
It
was
was
it was like
it was about
2.5,
two. It
2.6 or
was
so. It was
twice.
okay. Nevertheless, they saw me as a liability. Was what my
Right.
point is, that even with the additional salary, which was more than enough to even almost like pay
Can't
for
you
the
just
house,
let me have that?
have
I
that
make
little
a good
victory.
salary. Just let me have that.
Okay, it was twice. Twice. Um, So yeah, I mean, and it's sad, and it was incredibly emasculating. And as a man, like you feel like, "Ugh, I got to be the provider, and yet I can't even get a loan because my credit is wrecked. And man, I've been through the ringer, and it's hard to even like see your way out of it. That's the hard part. You're trying to really see your way out of this whole thing, and that's the hardest part of it. So yeah, it was a really difficult, dark time. But the good news is, to your point, I couldn't get a loan. We had to be creative. We had to learn. And
Yeah.
that's, what we can really talk about in an upcoming episode.
I feel like one of the things we talk about a lot on this show is that any kind of challenge is usually your opportunity, but we didn't know that back then. It felt really exceedingly challenging and hard, and you know, so I'm sure plenty of people can relate to that, and hopefully you can see past, this sort of failure as a capitalist or an entrepreneur, and not take it quite so personally, because you can be failing in one area of your life and be a great person in others. So I feel like our plan to tell my story is a little too much to take on in one episode. So maybe we should take that on in part 2,
Yeah.
and then just move some of the talking points down. So we promised you one sort of plan of action, and we're going to change a little bit, but
we
you will
didn't realize
still
how
get the.
we didn't realize how
We didn't realize how
painful.
messed up you were.
God, there's a lot of crap here.
You're a train wreck.
It's like going through a therapy session.
Right. I didn't really intend for this to be this way, but I just do feel like it's important to be honest with our audience so that they can see that they can come out of anything.
Yeah, we
Because,
don't hold anything back. I mean, that's the thing. We'll talk about our failures here. We'll talk about our successes. We'll talk about our deals. We'll talk about why we didn't do this deal or did do that deal, because ultimately we want you to go out and take action and on your own
yeah,
terms become a real estate investor.
I had totally, totally forgot about that Donald Trump thing
Me
until
too.
you.
I forgot
Yeah,
about it also.
it's
And
kind
like,
of crazy. We've been through, 2 crazy years of Donald Trump in the political news, and we never once thought about this
yeah,
story.
10 years ago. It was like
Yeah.
10 years ago that he told me that. It's crazy. And, I have to reflect more on it. I'm going to think more, and it might be worth even doing a whole episode on it, because what would we have done? Like, what if someone came to us and asked us advice on that particular nugget? How would we have fixed it? How would we have played that game? I don't know.
Susan Lassiter-Lyons, who I've talked about several times on this show, she wrote the book Getting the Money. She's a very successful real estate investor. She has about 500 doors. And she talks a lot about how if you can't make right with your lenders, then you go back to them with some kind of creative solution and you tell them first. She talks a lot about how your integrity is your number one currency as an investor. And if people stop trusting you, then you're screwed,
Right, because
basically.
she's raised over $1 billion now.
Billions of dollars. And she says, lots of times I come to someone, I say, this deal will do this, and I will pay you back in this amount of time. And then this property, had some main break or something goes wrong and it's not cash flowing the way I think. And turns out I'm not going to be able to pay this investor back in this amount of time. So I go back to them and I let them know first. I don't want them to come to me. I want to come to them. And I'll say, this is what happened. I'm going to extend the amount of your loan by this much, and you're going to actually make more because I'm going to pay you for longer because this didn't, she comes up with some kind of way to make it right, and she goes in first. And so if if I'm going to choose my guru in this situation, I'm going to choose her over
Right.
that advice.
Yeah. And, look, I tried to do that, right? I went to the bank and I said, here's the situation,
But you didn't have the chops. Like, now I would have gotten their face. I would have showed up and say, look, you've made this much on me in interest over this amount of years.
Right.
And I'm going to change the terms of this. You're then going to make this much instead, which is more. But I need the documentation right now to say we're changing this because these are the,
It just didn't happen back then. I mean, this is what happened with the collapse, right? The banks were just a total mess. They didn't even have copies of mortgages because they were robo-signing these things. So it's like, I mean, talk about it.
You were a scared little
No,
kid,
I didn't
though.
know the game at all. Yeah, I
Right.
didn't know how you do it.
And I would have been the exact same way. I would have been on hold for 4 days.
Like I can't get a
week.
hold of anyone. I don't know who to talk to.
I know to, right? And
Yeah.
now I would have been like, oh, I'm going to show up and I'm going to make this right because I'm a different person and you are too. And so you would have handled that completely different, right?
Look, yeah.
And you've read several books, like you've had a lot of experience,
Right.
but the inexperienced of us just kind of like, I don't know. We don't have the right people on the phone. I don't know who to talk to. Yeah.
All right, so that's enough of my pain. It's like a therapy session that's been need to put an end to that. So that's part one of our story and how painful all the mistakes that I made when I first started out in real estate and flipping. So don't flip and don't buy in speculative land projects. Buy real assets that actually can cash flow. That's a huge lesson. That's one big bottom line takeaway. And also don't be scared is another big takeaway. Look, I hit rock bottom. I had nothing. I had to be creative about how I got financing, and I was able to do it. Then if I can do it, you can do it. So that should be some encouraging signs and some news for you in all of this. But we're going to get back here on another episode, and we're going to talk about in part 2 of our story and our journey, some of Natalie's big failures with real estate investing.
It'll be a much shorter episode.
Yeah, much shorter. Just like her salary was. All right. We'll see you next time, everyone, on the Investing in Real Estate show.
That dig was so unnecessary.
But so perfect. Now go out there, take action, become a real estate investor, and we'll see you back here next time on another episode.